This safety video is focused on pilot decision-making as it relates to hot air balloon pilots. The emphasis will be on the pre-flighting activities performed by hot air balloon pilots. The pre-flight is critical in determining the airworthiness of the aircraft. Most importantly, the emphasis has to be on safety. The decisions made by a pilot during pre-flight are crucial to the safety of the flight. The intended audience of this video is pilots, student pilots, crew, observers, and other individuals interested in the sport of ballooning. We wish to gratefully acknowledge the following organizations for their contributions to the production of this video. Nothing in this video shall supersede applicable federal, state, and local rules and regulations. The pilot is responsible for complying with these, as well as any and all procedures outlined in their specific aircraft operating manual. Ballooning is one of the safest forms of air travel. Simplicity of systems, well-trained pilots and crews, and thorough pre-flights contribute to this excellent safety record. Pre-flight begins before you head to the launch site. The chase vehicle is just as vital a component of ballooning as the aircraft itself. It too needs a thorough pre-flight. Make sure you have plenty of oil and a full tank of gas. Nothing could be worse than having your chase crew run out of gas on their way to retrieve you. Check the tires of your vehicle and trailer for pressure and tread wear. Studies have shown that a significant number of tires are underinflated. Some are as much as 30% or more underinflated. Underinflation or excessive tread wear can lead to catastrophic tire failure and loss of control of the vehicle. The chase vehicle will be making frequent stops and turns. Make sure all of the lights are functioning properly. Be aware of local laws regarding the use of four-way flashers. The danger of a rear-end collision is very real. Keep in mind that propane can be just as explosive as dynamite. Remember, someone will be driving your chase vehicle that is not as familiar with it as yourself. Make sure they know where the license and registration are located, how to operate the lights, and any other items that may not be common to other vehicles. Make sure the driver understands their sole responsibility is to safely drive the vehicle. Someone else will be spotting for the balloon and navigating. Before you leave, make sure certain essentials are in the chase vehicle. Examples are maps, which are especially important when flying in unfamiliar territory, first aid kit, radios, fire extinguisher, emergency phone number list, cell phone, flashlights, and survival gear for the pilot, depending on the type of flight. Also make sure that the fan is securely fastened to the chase vehicle. Remember, the most dangerous part of the flight is the trip to the launch field and back from the landing spot. During the chase crew has to be especially alert to other drivers on the road who are looking at the balloons and not the road. Make sure you have a driver and a spotter during the chase. Any driver attempting to both drive and spot is an accident waiting to happen. Make especially sure your chase vehicle is in top running order. One aspect of the pre-flight that cannot be neglected is the pilot and crew. Everyone needs to be physically fit and in good health. The following are a few other items you need to consider prior to each flight. No flight can begin without a thorough weather briefing. The pilot must also consult the appropriate VFR sectionals for the area and bring them along on the flight. Alcohol and flying, as well as driving, simply do not mix. Always have water available and plenty of it. Ballooning is physically intensive, and even on cool days you run the very real risk of dehydration. The clothes you wear can contribute greatly to safety. Clothing should be made out of cotton due to its breathing and moisture absorption characteristics. Synthetics should be avoided since they tend to melt when exposed to heat, especially nylon, and they are electrically conductive. An extra set of clothes should be considered since you can work up a sweat easily and may find yourself doing a recovery in less than optimal conditions. The clothing you wear should fit snugly and have no loose or dangling components. Even long hair poses a danger, especially around the fan, and should be tied back or tucked under a hat. Morning launches can be quite cold, but by the time the balloon lands, it can become remarkably warm. It is a good idea to wear layered clothing, so as not to become overheated while packing up the balloon after landing. Your feet should be completely covered, no exposed toes. Considering that at a minimum for a small balloon system, the balloon basket and just one tank and the pilot will weigh in excess of 300 pounds, steel-toed shoes are not a bad idea. An average system with passengers can be well over 1,000 pounds, not something you want dropped on your toes. Ballooning is an outdoor activity. One should consider wearing a hat for protection, not only from the sun but the radiant heat from the burner. A pilot should have readily available spare igniters, a whistle to alert a potential balloon below of your presence above them, helmets for windy or hard landings, wrenches to tighten loose fittings, wind meters to determine wind speed at the surface, and other survival gear, as deemed necessary for the type of flight envisioned. The pieball, which means pilot balloon, is a vital piece of equipment which allows the pilot to estimate wind speed and direction. Everyone should have a knife handy in order to cut lines in an emergency, such as the tie-off line or crown line, or for freeing a person caught in the fan. A knife should also be carried during the flight for emergency purposes. No one should be handling any lines without the use of well-fitting gloves. They should be flexible and in good shape with no rips or tears. Leather is preferable due to its strength and superb protection against rope burns. If radios are required for the flight, the frequencies anticipated for the flight should be identified prior to takeoff. The radio should also be fully charged and operational. Mandatory and optional instruments for flight need to be securely fastened in the basket, operationally checked on, and properly set for local conditions. The altimeter should be set in accordance with FAR Part 91.121. Also make sure the keys are with the chase crew. It's a good idea to have an extra set of keys somewhere in the vehicle where your crew knows where they are just in case. The crew should be thoroughly briefed on their roles and responsibilities prior to each flight. They should be given information on the type of flight to be conducted, its duration, and anticipated direction of travel. The person designated to operate and monitor the fan must thoroughly understand the functions of the various fan controls, such as the choke, throttle, fuel cutoff, and kill switch. More importantly, the passengers should be briefed not once but multiple times as to what to expect and on safety considerations for the flight. This is most likely the first time they have ever been in a balloon. Never assume they know what they are doing. No flight should be undertaken without the use of checklists. Checklists are just as important for the crew as they are for the pilots. The basket is the only thing separating you from the elements. It is also your temporary cage. Make sure there is nothing in it that can harm you. Broken and exposed wicker is a tear hazard to other balloons. It also poses a personnel hazard within the basket should you fall or brush against them in a rough landing. The general condition of the uprights needs to be inspected for dents, bends, cracks, and corrosion. They must be securely installed. The envelope must be correctly and securely installed to the uprights. Ensure that all documentation required by FAR Part 91.203 are in the aircraft: registration, aircraft operating manual, airworthiness certificate. The airworthiness certificate must be clearly visible to your passengers. The aircraft logbook should be consulted to ensure that a 100-hour, if required, or an annual inspection has occurred. The owner's manual is a great source of information. Familiarity with the contents of the manual is not only important but also required. The manual provides extensive information related to the aircraft, especially as it pertains to aircraft performance and safety procedures. Can you tell which of the two balloons is the experimental balloon? Warning placards required by regulation and the aircraft operating manual need to be in place and clearly visible, especially an experimental placard. Drop lines need to be properly secured. Quick releases should be seriously considered to provide a means of jettisoning a drop line should it become entangled. At the very least, a knife should be carried in the basket. There should be no loose objects in the basket. Anything loose in the basket can become a dangerous projectile on landing. If equipped, the fire extinguisher needs to be fully charged and securely fastened. The fire extinguisher is primarily there to combat a potential grass fire on landing. They are unlikely to quell an in-flight propane fire. Such a fire needs to have its fuel source secured. Each propane tank needs to be securely fastened to the basket. The fuel levels of each propane tank must be checked using the spitter valve or liquid level gauge. No smoking must be strictly enforced during the fuel level check. Hoses should be examined for general condition and checked that they are secured to the basket and not loose to reduce the likelihood of someone grabbing them during a landing. Any fittings need to be checked for tightness. The skids should be in good shape and all fastening bolts in place. No matter how calm a day, always use a tie-off line with a quick release. Check that the quick release functions properly. The burner is the hot air balloon's engine. It needs to be securely fastened. Today's burners can put out millions of BTUs of energy. Sufficient fuel system pressure is needed to ensure adequate burner output and a safe flight. Cold weather results in lower system pressures and may require supplemental means of raising tank pressures, such as using nitrogen or heat tapes on the tanks. Prior to starting the fan, the fuel system needs to be checked for leaks. Various methods can be used, such as soapy water on the connections, or simply using your hands to waft the air towards your nose. All of the connections need to be checked for leaks. Any white spot detected on any of the hoses when they are pressurized is a sign of a potential propane leak. The burner should be checked to make sure it operates properly off of each of the propane tanks. Any backup burner capabilities likewise needs to be verified. Once the burner has been checked, secure the propane at both the burner and at each tank. A valve jarred partially open could cause an inadvertent release of propane that could be accidentally and unexpectedly ignited. Securing the propane at both the tank and burner greatly minimizes any possibility that both valves could be inadvertently opened, releasing highly flammable propane. You can also monitor the pressure gauge for any drop in pressure in the small amount of fuel that is trapped in the line. Such a drop would indicate a leak in the fuel system. What is the most dangerous component of ballooning? The pilot is ultimately responsible for the safe operation of the balloon. The fan, however, is considered by many to be the most dangerous component of ballooning. The fan needs to be closely examined for any loose or missing components. The muffler should be in good shape to minimize noise and the chance of sparks that have the potential to start a fire. The cage or shroud must be securely fastened. The fan blade must not have any nicks, cracks, or any visible sign of damage. It should travel in a straight arc and clear all structural components. There must not be any play in the fan blade hub. As the burner is the engine for a hot air balloon, the envelope can be considered the wings. Like the wings of a plane, the envelope needs to be examined closely prior to flight. The area where the balloon envelope will be deployed needs to be patrolled for objects that may damage the fabric. Once deployed, the pilot should be alert to signs of mold, tears, holes, or heat damage. The aircraft operating manual should be consulted for what size holes are acceptable for flight. Faded areas can be checked for porosity using the inhale test. If large areas exhibit porosity, the aircraft should be inspected by an FAA certified repair station. Excessive porosity results in increased fuel consumption and reduced aircraft performance. The top needs to be properly installed to ensure a good seal. Near the top on the inside of the envelope is a telltale that should be inspected prior to flight. The telltale indicates whether the balloon envelope design operating temperature has been exceeded. The crown line must be clear of spectators, untangled, not frayed, properly secured to the load ring, and definitely not wrapped around any body parts. Safety is a pilot's primary concern. Should an unsafe condition occur or simply is suspected, the inflation must be terminated. Anyone can call an abort during the inflation. Once the balloon is inflated and erect, a final set of checks need to be accomplished prior to liftoff. The vent needs to be checked. All of the lines need to be verified free and clear. The tank pressure verified adequate one more time. And the crown, rip out, and vent lines securely tied off. No more than the minimum number of tanks necessary for flight, as recommended by the balloon manufacturer, should be online. This will greatly facilitate leak detection and the rapid isolation of a leak should one occur during a flight. The temperature probe should be verified operational and that the altimeter was properly set. The passengers should be briefed again to reinforce what you have previously told them and to ensure there are no final questions. Ballooning is one of the safest modes of aerial travel, but only if proper decisions are made and thorough planning and pre-flighting are performed. We hope this video has given you a good overview of the many steps necessary to ensure a safe and successful flight. Remember, the pilot is ultimately responsible for the outcome of each flight. An informed and well-trained crew can be a tremendous asset to a pilot. One can never be too cautious or too thorough when it comes to safety.